Welcome back to the Postpartum Plan podcast. This podcast is designed to support and empower you through postpartum. Whether you're expecting, in the early postpartum days, or beyond, this space is for you. I'm your host, Madison Fugere, a dedicated postpartum doula and pediatric sleep consultant, striving to help parents feel confident and supported in their parenting journey. Each week, I'm sharing practical tips and expert advice to help you navigate all the postpartum things with confidence. Well, as much confidence as you can. Let's embark on this journey together, making your parenthood as serene and supportive as possible. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Postpartum Plan podcast. It is Madison here, your host. I am here solo today to chat with you guys. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I hope that you are having a good day. It's morning here today, and I am just hanging out, trying to get a couple things done. For those of you who follow me on social media, you know that I was in Maryland for a while and just got back to Massachusetts, and I feel like my life has been a hot mess since I got back. If you've ever been like away from your house for a while, you know that you get back and there's just like a freaking million things that need to get done. And not working for 6 weeks also adds stress, especially during tax season. So all of that to say, I'm taking a break from life and I'm here to talk to you guys. And hopefully you're taking a little bit of a break from your life by tuning in and listening. And hopefully this kind of feels like a conversation, even though I'm just going to be kind of talking at you for a while here. But yeah, today I wanted to dive into like one of the biggest questions that I get from new parents. And that is, how do I get my baby to sleep longer at night? And no, we're not talking about sleep training. We're not talking about, cry it out extinction method with these newborns, right? We don't sleep train until babies are at least 3 months old for lots of different developmental reasons that I could, oh my gosh, go on a tangent for. But we're talking about sleep shaping, right? So sleep shaping and sleep training are two different terms. I believe we did a podcast episode on it, but I also just talk about it all the time. And so you may or may not have heard about this, but let me explain, right? So we're going to talk about sleep shaping today. So what is sleep shaping? Sleep shaping is not a form of sleep training, right? We're not teaching independent sleep habits before 3 months old because they're not developmentally or ready for it yet. But what sleep shaping is creating good sleep cornerstones, right? It's creating good sleep habits. And that means that we are helping them to learn some new skills in a way, right? So this is kind of where we start, and it ends up evolving into more of a structured routine at an older age. It helps with creating gentle approaches to get good sleep habits in place so that eventually, as we ease more into newborn life and then eventually toddler life, there are these developmental milestones that happen and they coincide with a lot of sleep regressions, right? So we all hear that dreaded 4-month sleep regression. Now, by sleep shaping and having good sleep habits in place, you have a good sleeping little one, and in turn, hopefully, you don't experience as much of that dreaded sleep regression. I'm doing air quotes for those of y'all who can't see me, which is everybody, because I only ever use a small clip on social media. But anyways, so we're talking about finding ways to support babies and these newborns in the first few months of their life. And yes, we're talking about the first 3 months ideally, but if you are wanting to sleep train, not sleep train, and you have a kiddo that's older than 3 months, that's totally okay too. And you can do some sleep shaping skills there as well. It's a very, very, very slow, minimal approach of sleep training that you can kind of like do with older kids as well. So it's about working like with their natural rhythms and their natural instincts, right? And to create a foundation that is great for them as they grow. So like we said, why does this matter, right? By getting these kinds of things in place, we said that you are being proactive in creating a greater opportunity for there to be more sleep during those sleep regressions, which happen a lot of the time at 4 months, sometimes around 6 months, again around 9. We see another one sometimes around 18 months or so. There's a couple different time frames. And so by having these good sleep habits, you're not only setting yourself up for, positive types of sleep regressions, but you're also setting yourself and your family up for having just good sleepers overall. Being able to rest and sleep, getting your little one to sleep isn't just about your little one sleeping, it's also about, you and the whole family. Getting kiddos to sleep is not only going to help them to develop better because children have a lot of their developmental leaps happening during their deep REM sleep, which gets longer and longer the more sleep cycles they have connected. But it also is going to give you guys an opportunity as the adults in the household to sleep as well, which in turn gives you rest, gives you patience, and makes you an all of a better parent, like all around, when it's the next day. So, what are we actually doing to create these good sleep habits, and what are we doing to sleep shape our children? So, I'm bringing you 4 topics today, 4 tips and tricks. So, I've got a couple of information on each of them, what they mean, and then we're going to give you that actual practical tip that you can now implement into your life and even doing that, for the next nap or for bedtime tonight. So, the first thing is we want to make sure we're honoring awake windows and sleepy cues. Okay. So we're making sure that we're tuning in to our kiddos. And that's the big thing here. We want to make sure we're listening to their cues, what they need, and being able to kind of follow along with their cues while also giving a little bit of gentle direction, right? Because babies don't know everything. And sometimes, as I'm sure y'all have experienced, babies are pretty stubborn at times. And they'll fight sleep, they'll fight feeding, they'll be overtired or undertired. They go from 0 to 100. So helping them to guide which way they need to go is going to be very successful. So one of the big reasons why newborns are struggle with sleep is because they're overtired. People sometimes will just look for their baby to become really fussy, and that's their cue to put them to sleep, when in turn, that's actually a sign of an overtired baby. So when babies stay awake for too long, their stress hormones are going to go crazy, and then they can't fall asleep. So we want to hit that sleepy time, and that sweet spot is what we like to call it here in the sleep world, for these newborns in order to get the best success of your kiddo falling asleep independently. Now, when we're talking about sleep shaping, most of the time this does mean that we are getting little ones to sleep in their bed, their bassinet, their crib, wherever they're sleeping in an independent sleep space. This doesn't mean that they have to be, but I do talk to a lot of parents that are like, I love the contact naps, but I would love an option of being able to put my little one in their own bed. And so by implementing some of these things and helping them to get those habits in place early on means that you're going to be able to have more success in getting them to sleep in the crib or sleep space when you want them to. So when we're talking about awake windows, I have a chart I'm more than happy to share with everybody. I will link it below. It is a sleep chart that starts all the way at newborns and goes up to 2 to 3 years old. It talks about awake windows, daily sleep that kiddos need in 24 hours so that you can make sure they're getting enough sleep as a whole and see if they're under or overtired during the day. Average nap times during the day for kiddos and how much of a nap they would need max and when you should start to kind of wake them up. But in this instance, we're talking about those awake windows, right? So if we're talking about kiddos that are really young, that first month or so of life, that first 4 weeks, we're typically seeing awake windows that are about 20 to 45 minutes, which, let's be real, is just the amount of time it takes them to eat. So realistically, they're eating and going back to sleep. Once we get to about a month old, that switches to about 30 to 60 minutes. And then at about 2 months old, that switches to 45 to 75 minutes. And at about 3 months old, that's when we start getting into about an hour and a half or so of an awake window. So by being aware of what an average awake window is going to look like, again, that's average. It might not be what works for your kiddo, but by using those as a guide and then also tuning into your child. See, I told you we're going to talk about tuning in today. Tuning into your child to notice their sleepy cues. So are their eyebrows really red? Are they staring off into space? Are they rubbing their face if they're able to move it purposefully with their hands yet, which at this age they're not typically, but if we are talking about older kiddos, they may be. Are they yawning? Are they starting to become overstimulated very easily? Those are all cues that you have a sleepy baby before they're overtired. And that's what we want to look for. So I like to use the rule of like 2 or 3, depending on how like fussy you have of a kid. If 2 or 3 of these sleepy cues in tandem with the average awake window are happening. So say it's been 45 minutes, that's an average awake window for your baby. And they're starting to become really fussy and overstimulated by their play mat, and they want to be held. You're like, okay, I think it might be time to try to put them to sleep. Or if you have a little one and you're hanging on to them and you're holding them and they're just like zoned out. You're like, that's a weird sign. And then maybe they give you a small yawn and it's about time. Maybe it could be 10 minutes early for that sweet spot, but those 2 cues I'm going to say are overriding that awake window. Hey, let's go get this baby to bed. So here's your practical tip with this one. If you try to put your little one down and they are fighting it, right? We are just at that overtired point. We are fussy. We are crazily fighting the sleep. Try putting them down a little bit earlier or attempting to go down a little bit earlier for the next nap. I say this because we talked about the stress hormone. So if your baby is overtired and experiencing the stress hormone, they're going to fight naps more. Some kiddos, because they don't know the skill and as they get older, they're used to being held, then they might fight this a little bit. But if we're talking about little tinies, they really aren't at that stage yet. So if they are fighting sleep, it likely means that they're just overtired, right? Especially if we know they're tired and you're like, oh my gosh, just go to sleep. We don't know why, just sleep. We know you're tired. Trust me, right? It can be so frustrating. So trying a few minutes earlier, even if they don't show those sleepy cues yet, because they might then start to show those sleepy cues in that room with you. And ideally, they're getting those sleepy cues and they're falling asleep. Hey guys, it's Madison. Yeah, I'm here interrupting myself, but I wanted to take a minute to talk about something that can feel so overwhelming as a parent: sleep. So if you are in the thick of the sleepless nights, struggling to figure out how to get your baby and yourself to get more rest, then I want you to know that you're not alone. Here's the thing: if what you're doing is working for you, great, keep doing it. But if it's not, there are resources to help, and I'm happy to be one of them. As a certified pediatric sleep consultant, I work with families to create personalized sleep plans that actually make sense for your current and unique situation. No cookie cutter advice, just practical strategies that match your parenting style and your child's personality. Because let's be real, sleep is not a luxury, it is a necessity. So if you're ready to make a change, I'd love to help. You can book a free sleep connection call on my website, www.serenemomentsdoula.com, or reach out to me on Instagram at serenemoments.doula. Before they get overtired. So that is number one. We want to honor these awake windows, look at them, and also pay attention to sleepy cues in order to make sure they are getting to sleep without being overtired. So number 2 that I wanted to go over, we're talking about feeding. So just like as adults, how we eat all of our calories during the day, right? And we sleep all night. Babies need the same. However, their stomachs are so small that they do need to eat more frequently, right? So when you bring a baby home from the hospital, they're typically telling you to feed your little one every 2 to 3 hours around the clock. This is because their stomachs are so small, they can only eat a little bit at a time and then it digests and they're ready to eat again. As they grow, their stomachs grow and they're able to eat more in a sitting. This doesn't mean that they need to continue eating every 2 to 3 hours around the clock though. So what we want to focus on is maximizing caloric intake during the day so that we can get longer stretches of sleep at night. So typically we're talking about feeding every 2 to 3 hours during the day, even after your pediatrician has given you the okay to follow baby's cues. I say if we are not showing hunger cues before the 3-hour mark, we're feeding at 3 hours during the day, unless cued earlier. So that's kind of my tandem statement here, right? We feed every 3 hours during the day unless the baby cues that they're hungry earlier than 3 hours. Same thing at night, right? At night, your pediatrician, when you get home, might be telling you to still feed every 3 hours. Eventually, they might say you can let them sleep until they're ready to wake up, or they may say 4 hours. So again, we feed every 4 hours or if cued earlier. Okay. And so the thing is with this, we want to make sure they're getting good feeds in and that they're feeding effectively. With breastfeeding, it can be challenging to know how much your little one's getting. And obviously, that can be stressful for some people, but making sure that your baby's getting some good swallows in, that they're becoming that like floppy milk drunk baby after they're done eating. And ideally, babies that are feeding effectively are feeding and falling off of the breast naturally because they're full. Oftentimes, babies that are falling asleep on the breast are feeding and are still hungry, but don't have the caloric energy that it's going to take to get those calories out of that milk. Babies are very, very smart. So, all of this to say, we want to make sure that we are feeding more frequently during the day so we can get those longer stretches at night. The first stretch of the night is going to be the one that you're typically going to see gets longer first. So if you put your kiddo down when they're young, it's typically between like, 9 and 11. When you put your little one down, they may start sleeping longer stretches for that stretch. It may stretch to 4 hours, maybe even 5 or 6 eventually. And then the sleep stretches after that are typically going to still be about 2.5 to 3.5 hours, depending on your kiddo and their age, right? Obviously, the information here is very generalized to just newborns, but if you're listening with a specific age, definitely check out the notes in the show notes, or reach out. I'm happy to chat. So, our practical tip here, right, is in order to feed your kiddo during the day more, they're going to sleep more at night. But then what do we do if our kiddo is very sleepy during the day? I am here to myth bust. Tell everybody I'm shouting from the top of the hills. I'm trying not to yell so I don't break your eardrums through this microphone. But waking a sleeping baby is okay. And I'm going to repeat myself here. The never wake a sleeping baby statement that you hear out in the world is a myth. Okay? Babies need to be woken up during the day in order to eat to make sure they get enough calories in during the day so that they sleep longer at night. So if your baby is sleeping and it's getting close to the 3 hour mark, please wake them up, feed them, and then they can go back to sleep when their awake window is over. Babies and children as a whole, I mean, adults as a whole too, right? We only need a certain amount of sleep in 24 hours. And so if we are sleeping during the day all the time, that's when we start to have babies mixing up their days and nights because they're sleeping during the day. And then they're like, well, I'm going to eat now. I'm starving. And they're going to eat at night. So please wake your child up. That is my practical tip for that one here. We're going to move on to number 3. Starting the day at the same time. That can be one that can be really successful as your kiddos get a little bit older and you're trying to create some sort of routine, right? We're not on a clock-based schedule yet. Children don't understand the circadian rhythm. They don't have those skills until 3 months of age. So waking them up at the same time every day and feeding them and then having the first awake window at that time is also going to align you to have your first nap of the day at the same time. As kiddos get older, their naps tend to become the same length during the same time of day. So eventually that first nap of the day will be the same length every day. And you can expect when they're going to wake up and when they're going to have their second feed of the day. And in turn, this creates some sort of a routine. And as adults and humans in the society that we're in, we are such functioning clock-based people. And so it can be really, really beneficial for mental health and really just for scheduling aspects to know, hey, my kiddo wakes up at the same time every day. They typically feed and then they'll go down for their first nap of the day at this time. That's not to say that their entire schedule, their entire day is going to be like this every single day. This is just saying that if you can get that first chunk of the day the same every day, eventually it's going to kind of naturally happen where there's a a clock-based schedule happening for your little one. So whether that time of the day in the morning that you wake them up is 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 6 a.m., whatever works for your family, that part doesn't really matter. What matters is you're waking up at the same time every day. So whether that be, if you choose 7 a.m. as your time, they feed at 5:30, you're still waking them up at 7 a.m. and feeding them, even though it's only been an hour and a half. If your little one wakes up at 6:30, you can decide if that's kind of within a 30-minute window and you're okay with that. Or if they wake up and you're like, nope, you can hang out in that dark room. Maybe if they need a feed, feed them, but you're not getting up, bright lights, good morning, hello, sun, until that time that you've chosen. So we're going to continue to try to put our little ones down until it's that time. Like I said, I do use kind of a 30-minute give or take rule. So if kiddos are really awake 30 minutes within their typical awake window or are not as tired, give them an extra 30 minutes for bedtime when we get to like true schedule-based information. So you can kind of do what feels comfortable for your family at this point. So yeah, we're going to be like, it is morning, here we go, all of that fun stuff, right? Now, here's your practical tip for this one. Even if night times were rough, or even if we were up for a little while in the middle of the night, we still want to wake up at the same time every day. It's going to feel counterintuitive. Again, why would I wake my sleeping baby, especially in the morning? Because I want to sleep too. But if you're trying to create a little bit more of a routine for yourself, this is really the best place to start. And in turn, your first nap of the day, which gets us into the fourth one here, your first nap of the day is normally going to be the most successful nap to be trying to do independently. Their bodies are still ready for sleep. They're not overtired from the day quite yet. And so people see the most success with that first nap of the day. So that brings us to number 4, supporting naps and rescuing those short naps, right? Everyone comes to me and says, my baby won't sleep longer than 20 to 30 minutes. If you are with me, you're probably preaching and saying, yep, that's my kid, right? You're not alone. And just know that baby sleep cycles are about 30 minutes, give or take. So what's happening is if you're rocking, feeding, whatever, your kiddo to sleep, and then you're putting them down in their sleep space, when they wake up after that first sleep cycle out of that deep sleep, they're in like active sleep. They look around and they're like, where in the absolute heck am I? I fell asleep in my parents' arms and now I'm in this space by myself and it looks like a jail, right? Babies don't understand, right? They're going to be upset. They want you to rock them back to sleep or feed them back to sleep because that's how they fall asleep. It would be like if you fell asleep in your own bed and then woke up in your neighbor's, you would be utterly confused, right? So we want to try to help them to break those feeding to sleep habits or whatever to sleep habits if you want them to sleep longer during those naps. Or my big phrase on this one is, if it's working for you, great. And if it's not, then you can fix it. There are resources to help, okay? If you don't mind that they sleep 20 to 30 minutes in the crib when you get them down, but you want them to get a full nap in, we're going to do what we call a rescue nap. You're going to have a carrier ready, you're going to have a stroller ready, you're going to have a car seat ready to go for a ride, whatever it may be. And right when your baby wakes up, you're going to scoop them up, put them into whatever they're going into, and get them back to sleep so that they get a full nap in no matter what. This is going to make sure that they're rested while also still practicing those crib naps, okay? And it gives you a little bit of a break. If you're feeling like, nah, I don't want to do that. I want my baby to sleep in their crib, which is also very valid. Yes, we want to kind of break that habit. So we want to try to not feed to sleep if possible. When we put them down, we want to put them down that they know where they are. They're a little drowsy, right? That's where you hear the drowsy but awake. They know where they are, but they're sleepy enough that they don't really care. When you put your kiddo down, if they're starting to fight it, you can give them some crib side support. One of my favorites is rolling them to the side that faces the wall that's away from you, tapping their butt so their body kind of bounces up and down. That's going to help soothe them. And then once they're back asleep, you can roll them back onto their backs. That helps to crib side soothe and not have to do a transfer down. So that's also a great way to get your little one to sleep. And also to remember that if it's not working, that's also totally okay. Doing a contact nap or supporting a nap is developmentally appropriate, and it's not a bad habit, right? You know, if we get into a place where you're not wanting to do that, then obviously there are, like we said, resources to fix that. However, if you're comfortable doing that, then absolutely go for it. And if you ever get to a place where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, then you don't have to do it anymore. So there's my practical tip on that one. Do what feels like it's working for you. Contact naps can be great for some people. For some people, it's not. And we're able to kind of find you what we need, right? So to wrap here, we're going to talk about an overview the 4 things. So we want to be honoring our awake windows and our sleepy cues. We want to be feeding during the day in order to get longer stretches of sleep at night. We could potentially be starting the day at the same time if that's something that feels like it's helpful to you. And we want to offer support to get independent sleep and naps. And we can rescue our short naps in order to keep babies from getting overtired and in turn fighting naps and awake windows for the next sleep cycles, right? So we also have to remember that babies aren't cookie cutters, okay? I'm here as your pediatric sleep consultant and your postpartum doula to share information, but this may not all be applicable to your little one, right? I'm not on a one-on-one call with you, so unfortunately, I don't have the back and forth conversation that can be really helpful to give specific advice. If you're looking for that, I do Ask Me Anything calls for little ones under 3 months old. I'll put the link in the show notes. If you have a kiddo that's older than 3 months and you want to actually sleep train, I'll put that information in the show notes as well. And I'm also happy to do a 30-minute connection call to figure out what's best for you and make sure we're a good fit if you're interested in that. But it's not a one size fits all, y'all. We're not cookie cutter babies. And so being able to find the independent and specific support that you need for your kiddo and your family is truly going to help get you on a good kind of routine and get you into a good place. So definitely reach out if you're looking for some support. Like I said, I offer one-on-one calls. The information will be in the show notes below. So definitely check that out. Let me know if you liked this episode. Head over to Instagram. It's serenemoments.llc. And let me know how you liked it and if you have any other topics for me. Stay well and tune in next week and I'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the Postpartum Plan podcast. I hope that today's episode brought you support, relatability, and valuable insight. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review and share with any of your prenatal and postpartum friends and family. Your feedback helps us reach more parents seeking support. And if you're looking for additional resources, please feel free to connect via Instagram at Serene Moments Doula for constant information, tips, and tricks, or check out my website, www.serenemomentsdoula.com. See you next week.